Lars Enarson here with this prayer update and report about the situation in Israel on day 636 in the war. It is July the 3rd. Well, now it is clear that Prime Minister Netanyahu will travel to the United States to meet with President Trump next week already. And President Trump is very firm that he wants an end to the war in Gaza. He has said you can expect a ceasefire agreement to take effect already the coming week. So we need to pray for this because, of course, also Israel wants an end to the war in Gaza. But the only way that it can work is if Israel is allowed to win. And President Trump has said that he will be very firm with Netanyahu that this has to end now. But if it ends without a defeat for Hamas, it will create a very, very bad situation for Israel. Wars have to be fought until one side is giving up, capitulating, and that is the way that peace is established. And the war with Hamas is not over, neither the war with Iran, because neither one of them have surrendered. So right now in Tehran, for example, they are dancing in the streets and rejoicing, saying that they won the war against Israel. And the same will happen in Gaza if there is an end to the war without a defeat for Hamas. They will brag unendingly all over the world. We stood up against Israel for almost 2 years. They don't care how many died. They don't care how much destruction there was in Gaza. The only thing that is meaningful to them is if they don't have to give up. So we must pray for Prime Minister Netanyahu that he will be very firm back towards President Trump and say, let me win the war. Otherwise, it will just create, as I said, another situation in the short term where they will come back, because they have said so many times, we want to repeat October 7, even 1,000,000 times if necessary, until Israel is destroyed. That agenda must be defeated by a surrender of Hamas. So I want to remind you of Isaiah 62, verse 6 and 7. Very, very familiar verses for all of you, I'm sure, or at least most of you. It says, on your walls, O Jerusalem, I have set watchmen. All the day and all the night they shall never be silent. You who put the Lord in remembrance, take no rest, and give him no rest, until he establishes Jerusalem and makes it a praise in the earth. In other words, we are not called to be just spectators of what is happening here in the Middle East. We are called to be participants, actively involved through our prayer by crying out to God for reminding him of his promises, praying that his will be done. God has ordained it in such a way, and he has called us to be those watchmen on the walls of Jerusalem, and we must take our responsibility in this very, very critical hour. Outwardly, it might look great right now. Both the United States and Israel have displayed their great military capabilities against Iran, showing their strength, but the enemy is not defeated. They are just mocking, in fact, these things that Israel and the United States have done. So the war is not over. I want to remind you of the prayer points that we have that you can see in the description below this YouTube. Join with us in very eager prayer and cry out to God for a victory for Israel in this situation. Right now there is a peace or a proposal for a ceasefire, I should say, that is on the table, that Qatar and Egypt have put forth. Now we have to remember both Qatar and Egypt, they are embedded with Hamas. They are on Hamas' side. They want Hamas to stay in power in Gaza. But this is the ceasefire now agreement that President Trump has said that Prime Minister Netanyahu has already agreed to, and he now demands that Hamas will agree to it as well. However, Hamas has said absolutely no. So they know today that what happened in Iran when Israel had to agree to a ceasefire in a position of strength, where they had complete control over the skies of Iran and specifically of Tehran, and Iran was down for the count. Israel was not very eager to have a ceasefire with this tremendous military superiority at that moment. So everybody knows it was Trump that forced Israel to agree to a ceasefire. And that means that Trump is the one who decides. And this is hardening Hamas' position. What they now, the ceasefire proposal is that there will be 60 days of a ceasefire. On day 1, 8 of the living hostages will be returned, and then 2 more after 50 days. That's only half of the living hostages in Gaza. But during these 60 days, Trump says there will be negotiations for a permanent end to the war. But it's not over. Hamas is not defeated. They are also talking about 18 dead hostages that will be released in 3 different stages during the 60 days. Israel has to withdraw from the very important Morag corridor in the central Gaza Strip, losing a lot of strategic gains that they've had so far in the war. Friends, this is not the way it should be if Hamas is to be defeated. And we must pray. So thank you for standing with us in prayer, crying out to God that evil will be defeated, the hostages will be released. So spread this to your friends and support us also financially if you can. We want this to reach as many people as possible in these daily updates now when so much is at stake. We have to remember in the war 1967, Israel was so incredibly victorious, defeating all the enemies around, and they thought nobody will ever start a war against Israel again. It only took 6 years, and the enemy was back stronger than ever and defeated Israel in the initial stages because Israel had let the guard down. We cannot allow this to happen. Israel is a tiny, tiny nation. On the map of the Middle East, you can not even see it. It is a small nation surrounded by a sea of enemies. And the Abraham Accords now that President Trump wants to negotiate, Israel is not, don't have the luxury to take any chances. So as eager as President Trump is to promote this peace, we must pray that there will be victory for Israel. God bless you. Shalom from Israel.